Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Okay, so before anybody asks, I know you guys are going to notice my face is red. Okay, so I was doing yard work today. You know, it's hot out in these streets. It's like 100 degrees, 100 and something degrees out. So I spent too much time doing yard work. So, like I said, that's why you see the red. So I'm not a clown, guys. But anyway, for my people that are coming from the Philippines, I will say mabuhay to you. Kamusta na aking makaibigan. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Anybody who is coming from Russia, I will say privyet, dobre otra, kakadela, spasibo for coming by and taking a look at my video. I appreciate you guys very much. But I do have the final game of the Rapid Chess Championships, week 25 out of 25, between Wesley So and Nepomniachtchi. So I appreciate you guys very much. If you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we got for this game. All right, so we got the move e4, e5, knight to f3, and we got knight to f6. So it's not often that we see a Petrov. And, you know, there's a lot of different ways that you can play the Petrov, for sure. But what we see in this game is the move d4, which is the third most played line. So it is going to be a little bit more rare. Almost always you'll see a knight takes e5. And then, I mean, you're going to see different variations, but I mean, this is looking like it's about one of the strongest. Knight takes e4, queen to e2, queen to e7. You're going to get the knight, but then, you know, black is going to get their knight back because your queen is undefended. So after d4, pawn takes, and then knight goes to c6. You most likely see bishop to b5 in this position. Of course, as you guys know, after the knight does take, there is a lot of d6 after the knight retreats, and knight taking here, d4s, and then d5s. I've covered that before. That's why I went on a different you know, tangent this time. But like I said, we do see the move d4. And this is the Petrov defense, also known as the Russian game. And this is the Steinitz attack. So as you guys are familiar with the World Championship video I did, you know, all of the people that watched that should know who Wilhelm Steinitz was, first official world champion. We do see the move knight takes e4. We got bishop to d3. We see knight taking e5, knight to d7, and then, you know, most commonly we'll see knight takes d7. But I'm not sure if it was a pre-move or, you know, maybe Wesley was expecting a different move. That's something that they mentioned in the commentary. But we do see the move castles, knight takes, and then pawn takes. And then we go into this variation, which, I mean, has been played before. So it's not like this is a completely unknown territory. We do see the knight coming back to c5. We see bishop to e3. We got the move c6. Of course, as you guys see, the bishop is holding this knight. So, I mean, if you want to go into that, you're going to be trading a bishop for a knight. And, I mean, this is a pretty fairly open position, so you don't really want to do that. So we got the move f4. We got g6. Bishop comes down to e2. You know, we have just now saved our bishop after like 7 different turns of it being able to be captured. Like, no, not 7, like maybe like 4 or 5. Bishop goes to f5. And then we do see the novelty of the game, which is the move c3. And, I mean, you know, you're kind of possibly trying to give... Okay, of course you can't do it now because the knight. It's like, hey, I'm going to chomp you if you go here. But, I mean, you know, you're maybe thinking of, you know, bringing the queen over somewhere. Or, you know, just simply just protecting, you know, this pawn, moving it up because this bishop is kind of getting on it. We do see the move of knight back to e6. And then we have the move of knight to d2. And, you know, the very interesting thing about this position, and this is something that they actually missed when they were, you know, broadcasting this, you know, chess.com was broadcasting on YouTube. Because, you know, I try to, you know, get information about what's going on, you know, before I do videos. This is a position where Nepomniachtchi, he has a very, very explosive, you know, powerful move in this position. And it is a very clear advantage if he plays this move. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video and try to guess what that move is, go ahead and do so. Okay. So I will show you what we saw in the game. And it's not wrong, but I mean, it pretty much allows white to just maintain their advantage. What we saw in the game was bishop to c5, and this basically just simplified the position. We see bishop taking c5, knight taking c5, and you guys can see after we got knight to f3, everything is pretty simplified, right? So backing up to what we had after knight e6, and then the knight came to d2. Let's go. Knight came to d2. We do have the move d4 in the position. And it might not look like a whole lot because you're like, oh, I could just take, you know, with the pawn right there. And it's like probably not that bad of a thing. Well, you actually have some pretty nasty you know, situations that you can get into, mostly due to this bishop being, you know, controlling this diagonal. So the computer basically says that one of your only options is to actually go back bishop to f2, which kind of seems a little bit crazy because not only do you allow pawn takes and then pawn takes, you allow knight takes f4, and now you're just down a pawn. And it kind of seems like for no reason. Like, why would I just give my pawn away, right? This is literally how the computer says that you have to play this position. If we back up after we see the move d4, and you say, hey, man, I'm going to go ahead and take with the pawn right here. Because, like, then the knight's going to take, and, I mean, I'm going to still kind of be good, right? Well, the problem is, I like, kind of, what do you do in this position, right? There's two major, probably, moves that you can try to make. One is saving the bishop on c4, but the problem is that runs into knight to c2. And, I mean, you're either, you know, going to be giving up your rook or your bishop. This is a really kind of crummy situation to be in. If instead you capture the pawn, knight takes, and then you decide, hey, I'm going to go ahead and like avoid that whole thing, and I'm going to go rook to c1. Like, doesn't that solve my problems? Well, the problem is now, after the knight takes e2 with check, you're going to be looking at queen takes e2, and then you got bishop to d3. So, as you can see, I just took you through a bunch of variations. Like, this position is actually pretty crummy if Jan Nepomniachtchi finds the move d4. But luckily for Wesley So, he did not find that move. And like I said, after we saw knight to d2, he just simplified the position and we went down and we got into this position here. Which, I mean, black has a little bit of an advantage, but it's not as explosive as if you were to see d4. So if you guessed the move d4, then you would be absolutely correct on that, like, nicely timed pawn break. It's beautiful. So congratulations, you probably would have won the game. We do see the move queen to b6 for black. And, I mean, this is a pretty ideal situation. You know, the problem is, I mean, you're looking at a discovery here, a pretty nasty one on this king, and you got your pawn hit too. So, you know, you're kind of not looking the best. So the knight coming to d4 is pretty much like one of the only moves you can make. Queen, you know, you have to allow the queen to take here. After the knight takes f5, pawn takes f5, you do see bishop to d3. And then the threat is renewed on b6. The major difference in the situation is the fact that, you know, this file has just been opened. And then we see the move a rook to b1. And, I mean, this is kind of knocking the queen off his rocker a little bit. We do see queen to a5 because, you know, you're trying to say, hey, man, I'm going to try to at least get a pawn or something like that, right? But you do allow the bishop to take on f5. And, I mean, you know, you just, everything is pretty even. So, I mean, you know, and then black doesn't have the ability to castle over here. And you kind of don't want to castle over here because your king is just going to be literally in the center of, like, a whole half-open file. But if we back up, after we see the move, after pawn takes, and then we see the move bishop to d3, it's interesting because the computer is actually suggesting to castle in this position. And literally just castle, like, into a check. Bishop takes on f5 with check. The king goes to b8. And then queen goes to e1. We got knight down to a4. And then the rook comes down to c1. And I mean, you know, this looks just a little bit weird. I'm not going to lie. But this is literally the way the computer's like, hey, man, if you want to maintain an advantage as black, you need to do this. So that is what it wants. The computer wants what it wants, man. So, like I said, we do see the move queen down to a5. We see bishop taking f5, and then the queen does capture. So, you know, black has maintained the pawn, but the problem is you see the bar kind of goes up, you know, pretty high. You start to see a roller coaster at this point in the game. And I'm not sure if they were kind of getting low on time a little bit, but it's like you're going to start seeing it kind of go like this. It's going to be like... We got king to h1. And I'm really honestly not sure what king to h1 is. There wasn't really any check threats. I mean, there was like queen to e3, but I mean, after the check, you could just simply step aside. So you're not really, you know, like avoiding anything major. You know, there was definitely a queen to h5 move. And I mean, you're just kind of just like attacking everything. And, you know, possibly swinging rook over. And the black king is still stuck in the center of the board. So that is a very important point. But like I said, we did see the move king to h1, which is just like kind of extra cautious. And, you know, you can see that the computer's like, hey, man, why'd you make that move? Like, it didn't really serve a purpose. And like I said, I'm not really sure what it is. We got h5, and then we do see the move rook to f3, knocking the queen. The queen goes back to a5, and we see h3. And this is another situation where I'm not really sure what h3 is doing. You know, we don't really have any back rank issues going on at the moment. And, I mean, black is not really in a great position to attack because, like I said, their king is stuck in the center of the board. So it's like black is definitely not in a situation where they can start attacking people. So I mean, these moves like that Wesley So's making, he's just kind of playing like very, you know, cautiously. So I mean, like I said, I mean, this was H3 was, I guess, you know, you're just gonna create some lift. I mean, it's never horrible, but I mean, there was definitely like, you know, like I said, some stronger ways to go about it. We do see the move H4, which, I mean, if you can get into an endgame in this position, that can be good because it's freezing your pawns right here like that, you know. But, I mean, black is kind of suffering a little bit in this particular position. We see the move queen to d4. So this is just like, just bringing the queen to life. You know, we just have to make sure that our rook on b1 doesn't become undefended. Because, you know, queen taking a2 is on tap in certain positions. So we do see the move rook to h6. We got e6. Pawn takes e6, and then we got the move queen to g7. We don't care about our bishop. We want this rook. And, you know, Jan is saying, bro, you can take my rook if you want to, man. It's nothing. Which, actually, this is the best way to go about playing it. Long castles by black. We see the move queen takes h6. And, of course, we got pawn takes f5. Queen takes h4. And, you know, like I said, I mean, this is a perfect position where queen takes a2 is definitely on the board. Possibly swinging the rook over here. And you definitely have a little bit of some threats. And knight to e4, you know, at some point, nicely timed is like the best situation. Because this knight, I mean, it's doing okay right here. But you can always play b6. And then knight coming to e4. I mean, you're just kind of causing some, you know, maybe some problems. But we do see the move d4, which might kind of look a little bit scary. But I mean, this pawn isn't actually really going anywhere. We do see the move queen up to h7, and we are threatening this pawn right here. And there's not really a great way to defend it, and be completely honest. So we just say, hey, man, we're going to try to promote this pawn at some point. But like I said, I mean, it looks a little bit scary. But after we see the queen taking on h5 with check, we see the move rook over to d7, and this actually just blunders the game away completely. Like, what you really had to do was move the king somewhere. Moving it to b8 or c7 is much better than pinning your rook. And the major problem is when you move rook to d7, you literally move yourself in all kinds of different pins. So that allows the move rook takes d3. And as you can see, this rook is pinned. And this knight is actually pinned. You know, you can't just go grabbing rooks because you are looking at, you know, bye-bye queen. So, no, that's not what we want to do. So, like I said, after we see the move rook to d7, we do see rook taking d3. And you, like I said, you're just in super pins. And there's really nothing you can do to get out of it. You can take queen takes a2 now, but it's a day late and $1 short. The rook takes on d7. After the knight takes back, a rook goes to d1. And it is in this position that Nepo does resign the game. And it's basically because there is no way at all to defend this knight. You know, it's funny. I mean, I think the thing that's funniest about it is the computer is actually suggesting queen to d5 as a top move. Like the #1 move. It's like, hey, bro, like this is the best you could do. Like, I mean, take your pick, right? You know, what do you want to take it with, right? Of course, you're going to take it with the rook. But, I mean, this is just how it looks, man. It's bad. So, it is in this position that Nepo does resign the game. And Wesley So has won the Rapid Chess Championships. So, Malaka see Wesley So. Yeah, so that's a crazy game. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Spasibo. Meraming salamat, the King Makaibigan. And I will see you guys next time.